Welcome back. Charlie from Real Brooklyn Films here. Yes, Real Brooklyn Films. I know you guys have been following my journey of making this feature film, Marie's Zero Gravity Bar and Grill. Well, that is now on the back burner, as is often the case with feature films. However, I'm right smack in the middle of a new documentary called Rising Tides, and it is about the effect of climate change and global warming on the fishing communities on the eastern coast of the United States. And we'll be looking at the dying scallops on Long Island, the blue crabs in Maryland, the lobsters up in Maine, bleached coral in Miami, and the scientific reasons for all this stuff and the political stuff about, what's going on, who's not doing stuff. So if you don't believe in climate change, you should really stop watching this channel. And if you don't believe in global warming, you should definitely stop watching this channel, because that's what we're going to be talking about for the next couple of months. We're right in the middle of production, so let's go back to the beginning, and I can tell you how I actually came to this project. Let's get into it. So, the new documentary and inspiration. Where does one get inspired to make a documentary? Well, after doing the Trump movie, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to make next, but I thought maybe make something lighter, because that movie nearly killed me. But over Christmas, I was in Pennsylvania, and I was reading the New York Times, and there was an article in the New York Times about the Peconic-based scallops that are dying before they can be harvested. And that's a big deal. I grew up out on Long Island. I went to Peconic Dunes day camp as a child. I spent my summers at the beach. So this was a personal story. So when I got back to New York, I reached out to the writer of the article, Chris Magg, and another great Brooklyn guy. And I got the lowdown, and that sort of sent me down the rabbit hole to not just the Peconic Bay scallops, but what's going on with the blue crabs in Maryland and the lobsters up in Maine. And that led me to thinking about this on a larger scale. Obviously, climate change, global warming is a real thing, despite what some people say. And we will get into that in the movie. In fact, that's a whole third of the movie is legislation and, what's going on. But that sent me down the rabbit hole. And so now we are making this movie, Rising Tides, and I'm about halfway into principal photography. So we'll backtrack a little bit, and it's coming along well. I'm talking to people. Unlike the Trump movie, people are actually talking to me because, it's climate change and global warming. It's important, and so far I met a bunch of great people. I just got back from a week in Maine, which I'll get to on a different video. But let's go back to the beginning. Let's rewind and talk about how I started it, what I was thinking, and what I did, sort of my very quick pre-production, and what I was thinking, how I planned, my budget, all that kind of good stuff. And we'll get right into that after this. So, like all my other documentary films, I have no financing and I have no help. And particularly on this one, this needed to be a very low budget because we don't have a lot of money. And actually, I made 3 budgets. I made a very large budget with a crew, basically me, a producer, 2 shooters, a sound guy, and some nice expensive post-production. That was ridiculous. That was like $120,000, which I'm never going to see. I made a medium budget, about $25,000, and that was basically me, a producer, a shooter, a sound man, some rental gear, but mostly that covered travel, food, that kind of thing. Then we have the micro budget, which is actually what what my budget is at the moment, is $5,000. And I'm using all my own gear. I upgraded some stuff. I had to buy some things. I bought a second camera. We'll get into that. Because I really, it's time to do, these interviews should be a 2-camera shoot instead of just zooming in. So, where to begin? Biggest purchase was a second camera. So, let's get into that. So, as you all know, on the last documentary, I got the Canon R6, which I still love. It's still my main shooting camera, and this is the build out for the run and gun with the R6, and it's great. And I've been using it. New Rode shotgun, which we'll get into. We'll get into this whole build, but I needed a second camera, so I got myself the Canon RP, and yeah, I mean, it was still like $800 used from Adorama. It's a great camera, and this allows me to shoot a B cam. I actually got the nifty 50 lens on the RP. It matches perfectly with the R6. It's the same sensor. Doesn't have all the bells and whistles of the R6, but I don't need it to have all the bells and whistles of the R6. I rigged it out the same way. We got the cage for the RP. We got a handle. We got a top handle. I got a second Ninja 5 to record from the RP because, interestingly enough, both the Canons they shoot to an MP4 file, which is not native for Mac, as most of you know, which is really a pain in the ass. So, I mean, I like shooting to the Ninja 5 anyway, because it's better. It's going to get the screen. You certainly can record much longer than on the camera itself. It doesn't overheat, but also it shoots ProRes 22, so it comes right out of the Ninja 5 into the Mac. So, a second Ninja 5 for this, and we're good to go. So now I'm doing a 2-camera shoot, and the quality is much better. My options for shot selection is much better. Having 2 cameras with 2 microphones is much better if there's a problem. And when I was down in Miami, there was a problem. So having that second camera with the microphone was very good. So that upped my game a lot. And I highly recommend it. I know it's an expense, and I couldn't have afforded it on the Trump movie because we paid for that also. But now, taking this to a new level, the second camera was a necessity. I picked up a new travel tripod also, the Manfrotto. I don't remember the name, and it's in my gearbox, but I'll get that out and we'll pop that in here. So new travel tripod, new camera, new Ninja 5, and I think that's all the new stuff. But I'm traveling heavier. I flew down to Florida, and I basically took as much stuff as I could and shoved it into my giant travel box, and then my backpack and some other stuff. And we went down to Florida to film a marine biologist who's studying the coral reefs, which are bleaching down there. And that's a whole other story. We'll get to that too. So let's get back to the purchases and the budget. $5,000 budget is not a lot. And granted, I have all my own lighting. I got all my camera stuff. I need very little post-production software because I already did that on the Trump movie. I got everything I needed. I have an account with Purple Planet for all my music, which is great. We'll get into that too. And but basically, I said, let's make a movie, and I sat down and made a budget. So here's a new thing. I got tired of the budget program I've been using. It's really meant for feature film, for television, And it has all these things that you need for those things, but not for documentaries. To me, documentaries, if nothing else, need to be streamlined. And there are specific expenses and ways of working that are not reflected in those budget programs. So I made a new one in Excel. And I beta tested it on this project. And what's great about it is it fits the way that I make documentaries. So what you have is you've got your top sheet, which is basically all of your main categories in your budget for all the things that you're going to wind up having to pay for. And that's standard. Every budget has a top sheet. And then the detail is your, in each of those categories, what is in each of those categories and what makes up the numbers. And unlike your movie magic and other things, budgets, I only needed one detail sheet that I can actually put the numbers in that will reflect to the top sheet. I don't need 20 pages for a documentary budget, particularly when I'm shooting myself. I did put things in the budget for a larger budget. So like if for a crew, there are lines for producers, for the directors, for shooters, and some crew in case the budget is larger. On my budget, most of those things are blank because it's a $5,000 budget. But it's comprehensive. As you can see, all the things are in there. And then the next part, which is even cooler, is that for your travel, expenses, all that kind of stuff, there's a whole separate breakout sheet, which I'm calling Table A. And you can see in the table, each of our locations has its own dedicated set of lines. So gas, flight, food, hotel, and a miscellaneous number, because you never know what you are going to need to spend money on. For me, it's been ferries to get to islands where I need to shoot. So for me, in Shelter Island, the miscellaneous number is the $48 two round trip ferries out to Long Island. When I go down to Maryland, I'm going to be going out to this place called Smith Island. That's a $35 ferry. That's going to go into the miscellaneous line. But you can put as many locations in. I think I have 5 set up, but you can add as many as you want in Excel, and it will then reflect what you're doing. I find that by doing this, you really are not guessing at your travel expenses because it's all right there, and it's adjustable. You can play with this thing; it's not locked. You can add what you want if you want to change the category that doesn't apply to you. It's an easy fix, unlike some of the other programs where you're really stuck with their format. So to me, this is very flexible, but right here you can see what my actual travel budget is going to be for this documentary at the moment. I may add something, another location might come up, but at the moment, this is what we're looking at. And then the next page is location information. And what that is the name of the location, the contact, the address, phone number, and more importantly, a notes section to tell you what you need to think about at that particular location. Is there a ferry? Who are you trying to talk to? Are there things you shouldn't mention? There's a lot of that involved, and I just had some incidents up in Maine that we'll get into at some point.
Remember, mum is the word. Mum.
But know your location, put it in your notes, and which is great because there's no other program that has that. And then next is your schedule, and there you can put in the dates where you're traveling, again, who you're talking to, how long you're going to be there, any information that you need for that location is there in your schedule tab. So you've got all your tabs right in front of you, and to me, this has been great. The beta test has worked. I'm pretty much on budget. So, there'll be a link for this download. I'll figure out how to do that at the bottom of the video. So that's it for budget and planning, and that's the end of this episode. But there'll be more. The next one is going to be the actual getting into my locations and shooting and principal photography. And I've been doing vlogs along the way too, so I'm going to put some of those up also. The name of the movie is Rising Tides. If you want to know more about it, go to www.realbrooklynfilms.net. To get in touch with me, it's charlierbfnyc@gmail.com. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. If you don't like the video, give it a thumbs up anyway. And for all of you, my followers, who I still have, I appreciate you hanging around. There's going to be more content over the next couple of months as we go through the real-time documentary process. I'll be traveling back down to Baltimore, up to Connecticut. I may do another trip up to Maine. So there's going to be a lot of content and a lot of documentary information. And that's it. Remember, keep shooting.